Welcome back! Best sound enjoyers! We're soundchecking Half-Life Alyx. Most of us played it wrong, either on an OVR mod or by watching a YouTube playthrough, using usual speakers or headphones. But do we actually hear the sound Valve aimed for this way? The answer to this question, and also why this game sounds the way it does, involves NASA, a dead sound card company, and the shape of your own skull. I'm sure that after this video you'll see this game differently. I myself learned a lot of sick things. Stay tuned. We will need some solid background first. In 2017, Valve acquired a company called Impulsonic, led by two PhDs, Anish Chandak and Lakul Shantani. This team developed a tool called Phonon. Valve renamed it Steam Audio and plugged it into Source 2 engine. Basically, it's an acoustic wave tracer. What that is, it's a digital simulation of how sound travels in space around you. Let's see. You're standing in an open space, holding a pistol. There's a building 5 meters to your left. The moment you pull the trigger, the engine plays the dry gunshot, the direct sound. At the same time, the wave tracing system creates a reflection based on the original sound. It knows the geometry around you, so it detects a wall 5 meters to your left and pans the reflection in that direction. Because it's concrete, it absorbs some high frequencies, so the engine applies a filter. The reflection also loses some energy over distance, so the engine lowers its volume. And since the sound has to travel about 10 meters in total, the engine delays the reflection by roughly 30 milliseconds, the time it takes for sound to come back. All this happens in real time with dozens of first, second, third and more reflections from many sound sources at once. Let's see the Phonon in action.
Hello? Anybody here?
Reverberation is created by the physics, not with pre-made reverb presets.
Hello? Anybody here? Hello? Anybody here? Hello? Anybody here?
This technology isn't new. We have documentation of computerized sound wave tracing going back to 60s. By the 80s, NASA funded a small startup called Crystal River Engineering to develop the Convolvotron, or NASA's View project, one of the earliest VR programs ever. It was a $15,000 worth real-time 3D audio processor used for astronaut training and later adopted by government agencies and military contractors like Lockheed for advanced aircraft cockpit simulations. In '96, CRE merged with a company called Oriole, which adapted this technology into A3D 2.0 for video games. It ran on Vortex 2 hardware, a discrete sound card with its own processor, because CPUs of the time simply couldn't handle this level of spatial audio processing. But then, in 2000s, Oriole was destroyed by Creative Labs through endless lawsuits. Oriole actually won in court, but the financial damage was so massive that they still went bankrupt. Creative bought Oriole, took all their technology, and then did absolutely nothing with it. For years, nobody came close to what Oriole had achieved until Alyx and Steam Audio. Now, just like ray tracing in graphics, wave tracing is also a really intense process. If your CPU tried to calculate 10,000 sound bounces for every single audio source in real time, your frame rate would be destroyed. Even a modern Ryzen CPU can't handle that load while keeping the 11 millisecond frame timing that VR demands. Valve is known for perfect optimization, so they had to pre-render the world. During development, they place acoustic probes that ping the map millions of times to create a 3D snapshot of how the air feels in that space. At runtime, the engine interpolates between those precisely pre-computed probes, so it's obvious that the engine cannot do full real-time wave tracing. It uses those baked probe grids for reflections and reverb, and only calculates occlusion, diffraction, and direct pathing in real time. Only 10 to 20 important sources get full simulation. Steam Audio dynamically scales quality to stay within VR's strict timing budget. Alyx runs its entire Steam Audio Wavetracing system on the CPU. GPU acceleration existed experimentally through AMD's Radeon Rays, but Valve didn't use it. So, the engine simulates the room. Next, it needs to simulate you. Another piece of science is sitting right on your head. From middle school we know why our ears are all twisted and curled. The pinna is basically a biological EQ sculpted by nature. If a sound comes from behind you, it has to bend over the cartilage, which muffles the high frequencies. Your brain picks up that change and instantly calculates where the danger or the prey is. And it's not just the pinna. A sound coming from the right has to diffract around your skull to reach the left ear, creating about a 600 microsecond delay. Your brain uses that tiny timing difference to figure out direction. This whole process, the filtering, delays, diffraction, is called head-related transfer function, or HRTF. It's the mathematical simulation of your head. And this tech isn't new either. The first computerized attempts to simulate HRTFs showed up in the late 80s and early 90s when researchers finally had enough computing power to digitally model how sound bends around the head and the pinna. Oriel's A3D 1.0 already had HRTF. Only in the second version did they add wave tracing on top. So when you use headphones, the engine is firing the simulated digital anatomy straight into your ear canal, bypassing all the natural filtering. But was that enough for Valve? No. Emily Ridgway, Valve's audio lead, once talked about how she loved sticking her head between two speakers as a kid, because that's when music suddenly felt alive. And yes, that's because together with music you're hearing your room, your body, your natural EQ. So when designing the index she wanted that feeling. That's why Valve partnered with Tectonic to use their balance mode radiators. Why use them? They are incredibly light, which matters when you're wearing the headset for hours. They have ridiculously flat frequency response and relatively good bass for such a small driver. Because the diaphragm is flat, BMRs spray sound in a very wide angle, so if a headset shifts on your head, sound stays the same. So what they are? A BMR is a hybrid driver. At low frequencies it behaves like a piston. The whole diaphragm moves back and forth, which gives its low-end punch. As the frequency rises, the diaphragm transitions into controlled ripple patterns called bending waves. This happens because of the mass balancing rings built into the panel, which keep the diaphragm stable and let those ripples form cleanly. This combination gives BMRs two big advantages. First, no cone breakup. Traditional cones deform at the high frequencies, adding distortion. 2. Wide dispersion. Similar to planar drivers, but without losing low-end strength. But of course, physics are always on us. You can't get something without losing something. Since the drivers are small and float about 2 cm away from your ears, the bass, want it or not, scatters in the air. There's a roll-off starting around 150 Hz. So what do we lose? We lose the cinematic bass rumble you'd get from closed-back headphones. But the trade-off is worth it. Because the index leaves the BMRs open back, you also hear reflections from your own body, your shoulders, your chest, and even your jaw. That creates an insanely wide, airy soundstage. Some people complain that Alyx sounds harsh, so that's the reason. It was mixed specifically for those mids and highs to give you HRTF precision and absolute immersion on BMR floating ultra-near field off-ear sound solution. Now, let's see how did they utilize this hardware. Half-Life 2 reused a lot of legacy sounds from Half-Life 1, and that worked fine back then. But for Alyx, those old assets simply weren't enough for a modern, reactive VR sound system. Valve kept a few iconic Half-Life 2 sounds for continuity, but most of the audio had to be refreshed, remade, completely re-recorded at a much higher resolution. There are around 19,000 sound files in the VPKs, because in VR, repetition breaks immersion instantly. A bottle has a separate audio for sliding, rolling, light impacts, heavy impacts, all reacting to how hard you throw it. Sweet Justice Sound gave a hand to Valve to deliver all this huge library of physical sounds. Even a Matchbox has multiple granular layers. Your brain notices repetition in VR faster than in any other medium, so everything needs variation. Already well-known fact, Alyx's clothing also generates sounds based on your physical velocity. It's essentially a procedural Foley system for your own body. Footsteps, cloth movement, locomotion, crouching, even jumping, all reacting to how you move in real time. For Zen creatures, the team recorded wet sponges, leather, and even breaking celery. Lead designer Dave Fies recorded alien chirps using his own beatbox, processed them heavily until they became something out of this world. Roland Shaw created the UI sounds, the ambiences, the Combine, Fabricator audio, and the hacking puzzle soundscape. That's why the UI feels so clean, tonal, and high resolution. It's built like a musical instrument. It's this blend of old-school Foley and modern DSP that gives Alyx its precision and its texture. And this piano sounds much better than most digital pianos on the market. Well done! You know, if you put that vinyl on at a family dinner, you'd be misunderstood, to say the least. This music only really works for people like us who live through the story, people who already have emotional ties to the Half-Life universe. For us, it's brilliant. The soundtrack of Half-Life Alyx was written by Mike Morasky.
Doing a talk about music makes me think of that kind of famous quote, talking about music is like dancing about architecture.
Mike actually consulted with Kelly Bailey, the single guy responsible for Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2 sound, to preserve that signature 90s Half-Life industrial grit. And while Kelly built that sound on the legendary Roland JP8000, Mike was leaning heavily on the Axis Virus TI. And he delivered. The soundtrack is cold, mechanical, atmospheric, and deeply tied to the world of Alyx. Still, part of me wishes Kelly had been involved more directly. He wasn't just a composer in Half-Life 1 and 2, he also contributed to level design in the earlier games. His fingerprints were everywhere. But who knows, maybe he's secretly back for Half-Life 3. I'm not saying the new team is bad though, they are amazing. A fun fact, the track 37-6 lines up with the in-game clocks frozen at this exact time, the moment the Combine locked the quarantine zone into stasis. The track has this bittersweet Eastern European vibe that fits perfectly with City 17's atmosphere. Well done, Mike! Stringularity, Alice Matter, and Superimposition are probably the most emotionally impactful tracks, where layers of strings are being pitch-shifted, overlapping, messed up in time, enriched with massive low-frequency drones. Just as your path to G-Man's prison, where all the physics are distorted and broken, surrounded by pulsating Vortigon power all around. The whole pitch shifting is synchronized with pulsing physics in these rooms, thanks to the dynamic soundtrack system. The music is built from multiple layers, and the game fades them in or out, depending on the intensity of the moment. Drums can kick in during fights and get faded out when it's over, and you only hear the filling layers of the track. So when you finally release him, a clock rings. It's the literal sound of time itself. We can only conspire about what that ring actually meant. A journey's end or a new timeline's beginning. Either way, the ending is grandiose. Here's another fun fact. Before joining Valve, Mike Morasky worked in VFX on films like the Matrix trilogy, The Lord of the Rings, and Pirates of the Caribbean. So when you hear those massive cinematic textures in Alyx, that background suddenly makes a lot of sense. Another creepy detail.
Oh my God!
In episode 2, Eli tries to protect Alyx from trauma by yelling.
Close your eyes, honey!
But in Alyx, when walking through these reality-bent rooms, you can sometimes hear distorted Eli's voice, saying the exact opposite. These voices seem to trigger randomly.
Open your eyes, honey. Open your eyes.
And Eli was right.
And now he's using my little girl, putting words in her mouth. God damn it.
So does the NoVR mod sound the same? Yes and no. You still hear Steam audio working at its full, and after reaching guys who worked on NoVR mod, they confirmed that sound wasn't affected in any way. But in VR you have 6 degrees of freedom. You can lean, peak and tilt, and acoustics recalculate for you. And yeah, knowing how much technology and work Valve put into this game, I'm not surprised that it's still #1 VR game. So for a Half-Life fan, borrowing or renting a VR headset is absolutely worth it just to experience this masterpiece the way it was intended. So thanks for watching! Half-Life 3 isn't here yet, so in the meantime we'll soundcheck other games. Hear you!